1876. A soddy cut into the Kansas plain, 8 feet by 10, the ceiling so low a tall woman could not stand without bending. One window, one door that swelled shut when it rained. The stove had been burning since before dawn, and the room held every degree it had ever thrown. Lye soap and wood smoke and the thick sourness of wool that had not dried in a week hung in the air and settled on the skin like a second dress. She stood at a tin basin no wider than her hips, sleeves past her elbows, a kettle of water she had carried from the well balanced on the edge of the stove behind her. Her knuckles were cracked from the lye. Her hair was pinned so tight it pulled at her temples. She was not a character. She was not a painting above a mantel. She stood in that room before the sun cleared the grass line, and she did this every single morning. What it cost her to stay clean is going to cost you the version of her story you were given. It started with the heat. With a body wrapped from neck to ankle in cotton and wool, standing in a room the sun turned into an oven, with no moving air and no permission to answer what the temperature demanded of her skin. Number 15. What did a frontier woman's smile actually look like by the time she was 35? Martha Ballard, a midwife in rural Maine, recorded tooth extractions in her diary. No anesthetic. A pair of common pliers. The patient held down by her own family. Catherine Beecher's 1841 manual recommends salt and charcoal rubbed on teeth with a rag or a chewed twig. Nothing else. Tooth decay was nearly universal. Abscesses went untreated until they burst or killed. The daguerreotypes that survive show women barely past 20 with teeth already missing. Hollywood casts them with full white smiles. The camera is lying before the first frame rolls. Number 14. The real reason pioneer women wore their hair pulled tight and covered. It was not modesty. It was containment. Lydia Maria Child's 1832 manual and Catherine Beecher's 1841 guide both recommend kerosene combed through the hair to kill lice. Lard smeared on the scalp and wrapped overnight to suffocate them. Narcissa Whitman wrote about the difficulty of even basic hair care on the overland journey. Hair washing with water happened once a month or less. That tight braid under a bonnet was not a fashion choice. It was a woman holding a losing line against creatures that never stopped coming. Number 13. A woman in the dark, in January, walking 30 yards to a hole in the frozen ground. That was the outhouse. On the trail, there was no outhouse at all. Amelia Stewart Knight wrote about it in her 1853 diary. She described the humiliation of finding privacy on open prairie with hundreds of wagons in the train. Women formed circles with their skirts to shield each other. Chamber pots served in winter. Open ground served in summer. When dysentery struck, even those small dignities collapsed. Every Western grants its frontier women a closed door and a moment alone. Most of them never had either. Number 12. You may have heard the old saying, "Do not throw the baby out with the bathwater." That was not a joke. It was a real warning. Catherine Hahn, crossing the plains in 1849, described bathing in rivers when the train stopped. No privacy, livestock upstream. On the homestead, Saturday night meant one tub, one pot of heated water. Father first, mother second, children oldest to youngest. By the last child, the water was gray. Today, 99% of American homes have running water. In 1870, not a single homestead on the Kansas plains did. Number 11. Lice did not visit. They moved in. They lived in the bedding, in the seams of every garment, in the children's hair. Lydia Allen Rudd's 1852 Trail Diary mentions them so often they become background noise. Mattresses stuffed with prairie grass were breeding grounds. Frontier hotels were notorious. Period newspapers carried complaints from travelers who woke covered in bites. Women fought this war every single day with boiling water and kerosene. They never fully won. The clean bedrolls you see in westerns are a lie the set dresser tells. Number 10. Monday was wash day. And wash day was the most dangerous day of a frontier woman's week. Catherine Beecher documented the full ordeal. Water hauled and heated over an open fire. Lye soap that ate the skin raw. Clothes beaten on rocks and wrung by hand for hours. A full wash for a family of 8 ran from sunup to sundown. Burns were common and serious. On the trail, women sometimes washed in alkali water that blistered their hands down to raw flesh. Laundry was not a chore. It was a day-long physical ordeal with real injury risk. And the clothes in westerns are always clean. That silence erases the most grueling labor of frontier womanhood. Number 9. Think about what a pioneer woman was actually wearing against her skin. A chemise, the only layer that touched the body. Over that, stays or a corset. Petticoats, a dress, an apron. Drawers as we know them did not become common for women until the middle of the century. The outer dress might go weeks between washings. Sweat, blood, food, dirt, smoke, all soaked into fabric that could not easily be cleaned. Susan McGoffin, crossing the Santa Fe Trail in 1846, described her clothing falling apart on her body. Most frontier women owned 2 dresses. Some owned 1. The movies dressed them like they had a wardrobe. They did not. Number 8. The soap that cleaned your clothes and took your skin with it. Lydia Maria Child published the recipe in 1832. Hardwood ash lye mixed with rendered animal fat. The process itself could scar you. Lye is caustic. Rendering fat over an open fire is a burn waiting to happen. The resulting soap stripped every oil from the skin and cracked the hands that used it. It was the only soap most frontier women ever touched. Imported Castile soap existed, but on the frontier it was expensive and almost never available. There is not one scene in any western where a woman makes soap. The foundational act of frontier cleanliness is invisible in the myth. We are halfway through this list now, and I have not yet named the one that killed the most of them. Stay with me. Number 7. Every pioneer woman of childbearing age dealt with this every single month. And it appears in almost no diary, no letter, no novel, and not one frame of film ever made. The silence itself is the evidence. Menstruation is almost never mentioned directly in frontier women's writings. The taboo was that complete. What survives are scattered references to being unwell in private letters. Instructions in domestic manuals for making rags. On the trail, there was no running water, no privacy, no reliable way to wash those rags. Women bled through their clothing and kept walking. Staining patterns on surviving period garments confirm it. This is the single most universal female experience of the frontier. No Western has ever acknowledged it, not once. The deepest cut Hollywood made was not a lie. It was a silence. They pretended half the human body did not exist. Number 6. Remember this number. I am going to ask you to come back to it. Contaminated water was the single deadliest hygiene failure on the American frontier. The Oregon-California Trails Association estimates that 20,000 to 30,000 emigrants died on the overland trails between 1840 and 1860. Cholera, a waterborne disease, was the leading killer. 1 in 10 who started the trail did not finish it. John Snow proved in London in 1854 that cholera spread through water. But the emigrants had no way to know. They drank from streams where dead oxen lay upstream. They filled cooking pots from creeks where hundreds of camps had dumped their waste. Lydia Allen Rudd, 1852, recorded passing grave after grave along the Platte, cholera dead buried shallow or not at all. The living drank from the same water that ran past the dead. Cholera could kill in hours. A woman healthy at breakfast could be gone by nightfall. And the movies show pioneers scooping water from every sparkling stream. Mark number 6. We are coming back to it. Number 5. When the knife slipped or the child fell, what did a frontier woman reach for? Turpentine poured straight into the wound. Spiderwebs pressed into cuts to slow the bleeding. Poultices of bread and milk. Poultices of cow dung, which introduced infection directly. Burns treated with lard, which trapped the heat and made the damage worse. These women were not foolish. They used what they had and what they had been taught. But germ theory did not exist in common knowledge. The cure was often the killer, and no one alive could have told them why. Number 4. The jar on the cellar shelf that could kill a family between Sunday dinner and Monday morning. Home canning spread across the frontier in the second half of the 1800s, but the science of safe preservation lagged far behind the practice. Botulism from improperly sealed jars appeared in period medical records. Meat went bad in salt brine. Milk soured within hours during summer. Ergot in badly stored grain poisoned entire households. The woman who stocked the pantry bore the blame when something went wrong. She was working without a map. One bad seal on a canning jar. One warm afternoon in the root cellar. And the food she had worked all harvest to preserve became the thing that killed her family. Number 3. The Oregon Trail was not an adventure. It was a graveyard with a direction. By some trail historians' calculations, there was a grave every 80 yards from the Missouri River to the Willamette Valley. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, all hygiene-driven. Amelia Stewart Knight wrote in 1853 of passing 7 new-made graves in a single day. Lodisa Frizzell, 1852, described the smell of decay streaming from shallow graves along the trail. The women did the nursing. They wiped fevered children with dirty rags. They buried them in graves they dug with their own blistered hands. And then they walked on. We are close now. But the deadliest truth on this list is not in the number 1 spot. I told you at the start, the answer is not where you expect it. Number 2, the smallest crosses along the trail, and what they do not tell you about why they are there. Frontier child mortality was staggering. In some regions in trail years, between 25 and nearly 50% of children died before the age of 5. The causes were overwhelmingly tied to hygiene. Diarrheal disease from contaminated water. Infant dysentery, what they called the summer complaint. Measles and whooping cough ripping through crowded trail camps. Diaper cloths washed in the same compromised water. Amelia Stewart Knight, 8 months pregnant on the trail, recorded one child's illness after another in a steady, quiet hand. Today in the United States, fewer than 7 children in 1,000 die before age 5. On the frontier, it could be 250 or more. The small graves in every frontier cemetery are not accidents of fate. They are the direct consequence of conditions no one in Hollywood has ever been willing to show. The woman who buried her child and walked on the next morning is the toughest human being in any Western ever made, and she is never in the frame. Number 1, she survived the trail. She survived the winter. She survived the labor itself. And then the hands that delivered her baby killed her. Childbed fever. Puerperal fever. A bacterial infection carried into the birth by unwashed hands, unsterilized instruments, contaminated rags. In 1847, Ignaz Semmelweis proved it at the Vienna General Hospital. Doctors walking from autopsy rooms straight to the delivery ward without washing their hands were killing mothers at rates reaching 1 in 3. Oliver Wendell Holmes argued the same thing in America in 1843. The medical establishment attacked him for it. On the frontier, conditions were worse. Deliveries on dirt floors, attended by neighbors whose hands had just come from the barn or the field. No antiseptic. No understanding of germ theory for decades to come. Martha Ballard, midwife, documented hundreds of deliveries and maternal deaths in her diary. The timeline was always the same. She bore that heat in silence because there was nothing else the frontier allowed her to do with it. But the hardest truth in this entire story is not about the sun or the stove or the layers she could not remove. It is about what her own body did to her every single month, without warning and without relief, in a world that refused to speak of it. And once you hear how she managed that alone, you will understand why it was the one thing no one ever committed to film. This is the truth that was buried the deepest, and it starts now. Today, a city hits 110 degrees, and the news calls it a crisis. Schools close. Power grids buckle. In 2023, Phoenix hit 110 degrees or higher for 31 consecutive days, and the city declared a public health emergency. Frontier women lived in that heat for months at a stretch, with no grid, no fans, no refrigeration, no emergency services, and no one coming to help. They did not have the option of sitting it out. There were animals to feed, bread to bake, children to keep alive. And the heat killed. Army Surgeon General reports from desert posts document case after case of heat prostration among soldiers and families. Infants died. Grown men collapsed. Oxen dropped in the yoke. On the southern overland routes, wagon trains lost animals every single day in July and August. The stench of dead livestock along the trail was so constant that diarists stopped remarking on it. It was just part of summer. Lydia Allen Rudd, traveling the Oregon Trail in 1852, wrote in her diary that the heat split the wood on her wagon. The boards shrank and cracked apart. If the sun could destroy a wagon, imagine what it did to the people inside it. And yet the movies show you women riding in those wagons looking fresh and calm, as if 110 degrees on the open prairie was a mild spring afternoon. It was not. It was a daily fight for survival. And the women fighting it were a lot smarter about it than anyone has given them credit for. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because frontier women did not just endure this. They engineered around it. And the first thing they engineered was the house itself. On the Kansas and Nebraska plains, women lived in dugouts and soddies. A sod house with 2 feet of packed earth overhead ran 15 to 20 degrees cooler than the outside air. That is not a guess. That is consistent across dozens of homesteading accounts from the 1860s through the 1880s. Miriam Davis Colt, who moved to Kansas Territory in 1856, described her dugout home as suffocating in its darkness, but bearable in its temperature. She wrote that stepping down into the dugout on a July afternoon felt like walking into a different season. The earth was the insulation. The same principle modern passive cooling architects are rediscovering right now, 150 years later. Below the sod house, if the family had time and labor, they dug a root cellar. That root cellar was the only truly cold space most plains families ever had. Women stored butter, milk, and meat down there. Some slept down there on the worst nights. In the Southwest, the answer was adobe. Thick mud walls that absorbed the sun's heat during the day and released it slowly after dark. The opposite of a wood frame house, which heats up fast and holds that heat all night. Martha Summerhays wrote openly that she learned this from the Mexican women living near Camp Apache. They showed her how the adobe worked. They showed her how to wet the floors. They showed her how to hang damp cloth across the doorways so the air cooled as it passed through. Summerhays credited those women directly in her memoir, Vanished Arizona, published in 1911. That credit matters because most Anglo accounts from the period are silent on where the knowledge came from. And that silence is one of the uncomfortable truths Hollywood never touches. A significant share of what Anglo-frontier women knew about surviving heat, they learned from indigenous women and Mexican women. Adobe construction, shade engineering, plant remedies for heat sickness, food preservation in extreme temperatures. All of it flowed across cultural lines on the frontier. Historians disagree about how widespread this exchange was. Some sources document it openly. Others say nothing, and scholars debate whether that silence is ignorance or deliberate erasure. I am not going to pretend to settle that argument today, but the documented cases like Summerhays are clear. The knowledge was shared, and it saved lives. Now let us talk about what these women actually wore, because this is where Hollywood told its biggest lie. Every Western film you have ever seen puts frontier women in heavy dark fabric, tight corsets, long sleeves buttoned to the wrist, hair piled up under a bonnet, standing in a sunlit room at midday, looking composed and cool. The photographic record says the opposite. Collections at the Kansas State Historical Society and the Arizona Historical Society show women in loose cotton shifts, sleeves rolled past the elbow, bare feet, hair cropped short or pinned flat against the skull. These were not women posing for fashion. These were women doing whatever it took to get through a 112 degrees Fahrenheit afternoon without collapsing. On the worst days, they wet their own clothing and wore it damp. They tied wet kerchiefs around their necks and wrists where the blood ran close to the surface. They knew, without anyone teaching them the medical term, that cooling the pulse points cooled the whole body. Catherine Hahn, traveling overland in 1849, wrote about soaking linens in creek water and draping them over the wagon hoops to create a crude evaporative cooler. Wet cloth across a frame, the wind passing through it, the same basic physics behind a modern swamp cooler. She figured it out on a wagon trail in the middle of nowhere with no engineering degree and no manual. Just observation, desperation, and common sense. The daily schedule was itself a survival tool. Frontier women did not work through the heat of the day. They worked before dawn. They rested completely at midday. Then they worked again after sundown, sometimes well into the night. Every heavy chore, the laundry, the baking, the hauling, happened in the dark hours. This was not laziness, this was strategy, and almost every diary from the period confirms it. Modern heat safety guidelines from agencies like OSHA say the exact same thing today. Avoid exertion during peak heat. Rest in shade. Hydrate constantly. Frontier women were following that protocol a century and a half before anyone wrote it down in an official manual. And at night, they slept outside. Not by choice, by necessity. A wood frame house, or even a soddy, held the day's heat well into the night. So families dragged bedding onto porches, into yards, onto bare ground, under the open sky. Women, children, sometimes whole families in a row on the dirt. Scorpions, snakes, and biting insects were the price of a few degrees of relief. Hollywood has never once shown you that image. A frontier mother sleeping on the ground next to her children, staring up at the stars because the house was an oven until 3 a.m. Water was everything, and cold water was a luxury most of them never had. Ice on the frontier was almost non-existent outside of major towns, and even there, it was staggeringly expensive. In 1870s Tombstone, when ice was available at all, it sold for as much as $1 a pound. That is roughly $30 in today's money. For 1 pound of ice. Most frontier women never saw commercial ice in their lives. What they had was spring water, well water, and creek water, and they built systems around it. Spring houses, small stone or wood shelters constructed directly over a cold water source, kept food cool through evaporation and constant cold water flow. Wet burlap draped over clay pots and hung in a breeze created a simple evaporative cooler that could drop the temperature of stored water by 15 or 20 degrees. Lydia Allen Rudd described the daily ritual of hauling water not just for drinking, but for cooling. Soaking cloths, wetting walls, dampening the dirt floor inside the sari to pull the temperature down. Water was not just for thirst. Water was their AIR conditioning, and they rationed it with the discipline of a field commander because hauling water in July heat was itself dangerous work. A woman carrying 2 buckets from a well a quarter-mile away in 110 degrees Fahrenheit sun was spending energy to save energy. Every drop had to count. And remember the question I asked you at the start. What did these women know that we forgot? Here is where the answer gets painful, because the people who paid the highest price for the heat were the smallest. Infant mortality on the frontier spiked every summer. Army Surgeon General reports from Fort Yuma and other desert posts document infant deaths from heat exposure with clinical bluntness. The numbers are hard to read. Mothers knew the odds. A baby born in June on the southern plains had markedly worse chances of seeing September than one born in October. What mothers did with that knowledge was everything they had. Wet wrapping, shade shelters built from scraps, night nursing schedules to avoid heating the baby with body contact during the day. Martha Summerhays wrote about her son at Fort Yuma, about the terror of watching his skin flush and his breathing change in the heat. She kept him alive. Not every mother did. Some women buried children in graves they dug themselves in ground so hard and dry it took hours to break through. There is no statistic for the grief that filled those summers, but it was the realest thing on the frontier, and those mothers went back to work the next morning because the heat did not stop for morning. Then it all changed, and it changed fast. Commercial ice delivery arrived in frontier towns in the 1880s and 90s. Suddenly, for a price, you could buy cold. Mechanical refrigeration followed within a generation. Electric fans appeared in homes by the 1920s, window air conditioning units by the 1950s. And the old knowledge did not fade slowly. It vanished. Within 20 or 30 years, the methods that kept frontier women alive became curiosities, then punchlines, then nothing. Home economics programs in the early 1900s actively discouraged what they called the old ways. Sleeping outside was primitive. Dampening floors was unsanitary. Adobe was for poor people. Progress meant forgetting. And the movies finished the job. Hollywood replaced the real frontier woman, the one in the loose shift with dirt on her feet and cropped hair, sleeping on the ground outside because the house was too hot to bear, with a fantasy. A woman in a corset and a clean dress, standing in a wooden house at noon, smiling. That image is a lie. It was always a lie. And every Western you grew up watching told it to you. John Ford's Monument Valley epics. The television westerns of the 1950s and 60s, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Big Valley. Every one of them dressed frontier women like they were going to church in Connecticut. Not a bead of sweat, not a hair out of place. She carried that quietly, the way she carried everything the frontier placed on her without asking. But her body did not stay in one room, and it did not stay in one place. When the wagon rolled west, she went with it, and the space she lived in shrank to something narrower than her own shoulders and lower than the basin she had left behind. Keeping her body clean inside that wagon was a fight measured in inches, fought every hour of every mile against dust and jolting and the complete absence of privacy. Number 15. The rags were real. That phrase, "on the rag," did not come from nowhere. It came from strips of cotton or linen, folded and pinned between the legs, worn all day under layers of skirt. And when the day was done, a woman washed that cloth in the same river her family drank from, the same basin that cleaned their wounds. Cold water, lye soap that stripped skin raw, no drying rack in a moving wagon train. Wet cloth, reworn the next morning. In summer heat, under 4 layers of fabric, the weight of it alone was a punishment. Hollywood dressed these women in pressed cotton. The truth underneath was desperate engineering with whatever was at hand. Number 14. Underwear. As we know it, did not exist. For most of the frontier era, women wore split drawers, open at the center. They were designed for practicality under long skirts, not for holding anything in place. There was no elastic, no waistband that gripped, nothing to attach a cloth to. Everything stayed where it was by folding, by friction, and by hope. A woman walking 15 miles beside a wagon had no guarantee that hope would hold. The garment beneath the dress was not built for what her body needed. She made it work anyway, every single month, because there was no other choice. Number 13. When cloth was not available, the land provided. Sphagnum moss in the Pacific Northwest, buffalo grass on the open plains, wool scraps where sheep were kept, rabbit fur in the mountain camps. Women used what the ground offered, and some of those materials worked better than anyone gave them credit for. Sphagnum moss absorbs up to 20 times its weight in moisture. The Red Cross used it for wound dressings in the First World War. Frontier women knew it long before that. No one wrote them a manual. They figured it out alone, in silence, in places where the nearest neighbor was a day's ride away. Number 12. And silence is exactly the right word. The trail diaries tell you almost everything about a pioneer woman's life. What she cooked, what she feared, how her children cried at night. But the word menstruation appears almost nowhere. What appears instead is unwell, sick. The curse, my monthly. Some diaries run for years without a single reference. That absence is not an accident. It is the record itself. A culture so determined to keep this invisible that even a woman writing in her own private journal could not bring herself to name it. Hold that silence in your mind. We are going to find out who enforced it. Number 11. Into that silence walked Lydia Pinkham. In 1875, from a kitchen in Lynn, Massachusetts, she bottled something she called a vegetable compound. By the 1880s, it was the most widely advertised product in America. It promised relief from female complaints. That phrase covered everything from cramps to a prolapsed uterus. The active ingredients were black cohosh, fenugreek, and up to 18% alcohol. One bottle cost $1, a full day's wages for a working woman. Pioneer women drank it because there was nothing else on the shelf, and the shelf was bare on purpose. Number 10. The menstrual belt, a cotton or elastic waistband with clips to hold a folded cloth in place. The Hoosier sanitary belt, patented in the 1890s, was one of the first commercial versions. Before that, women built their own from strips of fabric and whatever fastener they could find. The belt sat against the skin, under every layer all day. Adjusting it meant undressing. In a one-room sod house with a husband and 6 children, that meant waiting until dark. A woman could spend an entire day in discomfort she could not fix without privacy she did not have. Remember that. The next item explains why. Number 9. In March of 1873, Congress passed the Comstock Act. Anthony Comstock personally supervised its enforcement. The law classified information about menstruation, contraception, and female health as obscene material, illegal to mail, illegal to publish, illegal to distribute. A woman on a homestead in Nebraska in 1880 could not legally receive a pamphlet explaining what was happening inside her own body. The penalty was up to 5 years in prison at hard labor. This is why the diaries are silent. This is why the medical guides are vague. The law did not just suppress products, it suppressed knowledge. And it worked. Are you beginning to see who built the silence? We are not done naming them. Number 8. The work did not stop. Not for a day, not for an hour. Catherine Hahn crossed the Overland Trail in 1849. Her diary, held at the Bancroft Library, records women walking 15 to 20 miles a day beside the wagon, cooking over open fire at every stop, hauling water, lifting children. Illness changed nothing in the schedule. There was no rest day. There was no sick day. Hollywood loves to show pioneer women riding inside the wagon, maybe gazing at the horizon. Most of them walked, and on the days their bodies asked for mercy, the trail gave none. Number 7. There was no privacy. A wagon company of 200 people moved in a column across open prairie. No trees for 100 miles. No outhouse. No tent. Women developed a system. They would walk to the far side of the wagon before dawn. They would fall behind the column and crouch with their skirts spread wide as a shield. That was the only wall they had. Multiple trail accounts describe this, always in the softest possible language. For menstrual needs, this was the entire infrastructure. Open sky, open ground, and a cotton skirt between a woman and every pair of eyes on the trail. Number 6. And the cost of all this was infection. Without clean water, without soap that did not strip the skin, without any understanding of bacteria until the end of the century, reused menstrual cloths bred chronic irritation and worse. Medical texts from the era reference conditions they called uterine catarrh. They blamed the women, not the conditions. A modern woman changes a product and throws it away. A frontier woman washed the same cloth for years, dried it if she was lucky, and wore it again. The gap between then and now is not a gap. It is a canyon. Number 5. And no one warned them it was coming. There was no sex education. Mothers often could not bring themselves to explain. Catherine Beecher published the most detailed domestic guide of the era, covering everything from bread to bookkeeping. Menstruation did not appear. Girls learned what was happening to them by having it happen. Multiple first-person accounts from the late 19th century describe girls who believed they were dying when their first blood arrived. The terror was real, and it was manufactured by a culture that could not say the word out loud. That question I planted at the start, which truth rewrites the picture, keep it close now. We are almost there. Number 4. When a woman's body reached the end of its fertile years, the frontier had a word for what happened to her. The word was madness. Medical literature of the era classified every symptom of menopause under hysteria or nervous collapse. Dr. Edward Clark published Sex in Education in 1873, arguing that female biology made women unfit for serious work. hot flashes, mood changes, irregular bleeding. The prescription was bed rest, opiates, or an asylum. A woman who had survived the trail, buried children, built a home from sod, could be locked away because her body was changing, and the men who called themselves doctors did not care to understand why. Number 3. Every condition from cramps to cancer was filed under 2 words: female complaints. It was not just a euphemism, it was a diagnostic dead end. Frontier doctors would not examine women, would not name what was wrong, would not look. Women died of ovarian cysts and ectopic pregnancies that were never treated because no one would investigate. The letters pioneer women wrote to Lydia Pinkham's company, archived at the Schlesinger Library at Radcliffe, describe their symptoms in heartbreaking detail. They wrote to a patent medicine company because it was the only place that answered. Number 2. And here is the truth that sets up the final one. The average frontier woman bore 7 to 10 children. Census data from the 1850s through the 1870s shows average family sizes of 8 to 12 in frontier counties. Pregnancy suppresses menstruation. So does breastfeeding, which lasted up to 2 years per child because there was no alternative food for an infant. Do the math. A woman who married at 18 and bore 10 children spent the majority of her fertile life either pregnant or nursing. The monthly problem on this list was not monthly for her. It happened in the gaps between pregnancies. The body's calendar was not her own. It belonged to the children she carried. Number 1. And now the truth that changes every item you just heard. Most pioneer women's bodies did not work the way a modern woman's body works. Between relentless pregnancy, years of breastfeeding, chronic malnutrition, extreme physical labor, and dangerously low body fat, many frontier women experienced what medicine calls amenorrhea, the absence of menstruation, not for a month, for years at a stretch. A modern woman will menstruate roughly 450 times in her life. A frontier woman who bore 10 children may have menstruated fewer than 50 times in hers. The difference is not small. It is an order of magnitude. Every other item on this list is real. The rags, the belts, the silence, the shame. She endured the road because the trail did not pause for what a woman's body needed. But every morning on that wagon raised the same question her skin and her hair and her hands had been asking since she left the soddy behind. How did she wash? Not the way the paintings showed it. Not with a clean river and a private bank and an afternoon of sunlight. She washed with water she could not trust, in time she did not own, behind a blanket held up by another woman who needed the same mercy and would take her turn next. Number 15. Cooking your food over animal dung. West of the Missouri River bluffs, the trees disappeared. No wood meant no fire unless you found something else to burn. Lodisa Frizzell wrote in 1852 about the first time she cooked over buffalo chips. She called it revolting. Within a week, she stopped noticing. Children were sent out every evening with sacks to collect dried dung. Chips had to be bone dry. Wet ones smoked into the food. A chip fire burned cooler than wood. Bread took longer. Meat charred unevenly. Captain Randolph Marcy's guidebook gave explicit instructions on how to burn them efficiently. The smell coated every meal for 5 months. Nobody died of it, but it tells you where the bar started on this road. Number 14. No dental care for 2,000 miles. Marcy listed dental forceps in his recommended kit. Iron pliers for pulling teeth on the open prairie. Dr. Israel Lord, traveling in 1849, noted toothaches as a constant complaint in every camp. Hardtack and dried meat ground enamel to nothing over 5 months. An untreated abscess could drain into the jawbone and become blood poisoning. The only remedy was extraction by whoever had the steadiest hand. No anesthetic. A leather strap to bite down on if you were lucky. The forceps were packed because everyone knew you were going to lose teeth on the way west. Number 13. The same clothes for 5 months straight. Amelia Stewart Knight wrote about skirts caked with mud so heavy they added pounds to every step. Catherine Hahn noted hemlines dragging through axle grease and animal waste. Women wore full-length dresses that caught every splash the trail could throw. Wool never dried. Wet seams rubbed skin raw day after day. Open sores formed at the waist, the neck, the inner thighs. They could not heal because the same filthy cloth sat against them the next morning. A laundry day required a full halt near Goodwater. Most wagon captains allowed it perhaps twice on the entire crossing. 2 washings in 5 months. Number 12. No privacy on the open plains. Hundreds of miles without a single bush or rock tall enough to stand behind. Catherine Hahn described women forming circles with their skirts held wide to shield each other. That was the full accommodation the trail offered. Women held their needs for dangerous lengths of time. Urinary infections and severe bowel cramping followed. When dysentery struck, privacy became physically impossible. You went where you were, in full view of the company. Remember this one. The inability to manage human waste away from camp and water feeds directly into what is coming above. Number 11. Body lice by week 3. Universal. Every family, every wagon. Ezra Meeker described it in his account of 1852. Every night, families sat together cracking lice between their thumbnails before attempting sleep. The wagon interior was an incubator. The only real remedy was boiling all clothing and bedding. That required fuel and halt time nobody could spare. Some immigrants burned their clothes at journey's end. Body lice carry epidemic typhus. Nobody on the trail knew that. Typhus deaths in the records are usually listed simply as fever. The mechanism was invisible. The misery was not. Number 10. Months without bathing a single time. The last full bath most immigrants took was in Missouri. The next would be in Oregon, 5 months between. When rivers were accessible, women bathed fully clothed for modesty. Men sometimes swam, but swift currents drowned enough of them that many companies forbade it. Skin conditions became universal. Boils, fungal infections, the alkaline dust of the high plains mixed with weeks of unwashed body oil and cracked the skin open. By mid-journey, emigrants described each other as unrecognizable, and broken skin in those conditions is an open door. We are climbing toward what waited on the other side of that door. Number 9. Menstruation without sanitation. The subject almost no diary mentions directly. That silence is itself the evidence. Catherine Hahn's cyclical references to feeling unwell at regular intervals. Rags were reused without proper washing because water could not be spared. Fabric that should have been boiled was merely rinsed and returned to use. Half the immigrant population managed this silently for 5 months while walking 10 to 15 miles a day beside the wagon, not riding inside it, but walking, completely absent from every film depiction of the crossing. And nobody put it on a screen. Not once. Number 8. The wagon itself. A 40-square-foot oven and sick room, 4 feet wide, 10 feet long. Canvas bonnet, trapping heat above 110 degrees on summer days. No cross ventilation unless both ends were untied, which let in choking alkaline dust. When someone fell ill, they lay in that box breathing stagnant air, sweating into bedding the whole family shared. Most immigrants chose to sleep under the wagon rather than inside it because the box was unbearable. Hollywood puts entire families sitting comfortably inside. clean blankets, room to move. The diaries say you could barely turn over without elbowing a child or knocking a flour sack loose. That wagon was not shelter. It was the problem. Number 7. Food spoiled before you could eat it. By week 6, the weevils were in the flour barrel. Catherine Hahn documented bacon going rancid in the summer heat. Throw it out and starve, or sift the weevils by hand and bake with what remained. No fresh vegetables survived past the first week. By month 3, scurvy symptoms appeared. Bleeding gums, loose teeth, wounds refusing to close. A full food outfit for a family of 4 cost $150 to $200. Roughly $5,500 today. You could not afford to throw food away on that road. You ate what you had, rot and all. And your body answered for it. Number 6. Wound care meant infection was nearly certain. Dr. Israel, Lord documented it through 1849. Axe injuries, crushing wounds from wagon wheels, accidental gunshots, far more common than any movie suggests. No antiseptic existed that worked. Joseph Lister would not use carbolic acid until 1867. Wounds were dressed with strips torn from clothing stiff with weeks of filth. River water used to flush a cut was the same water animals had died upstream. Gangrene and sepsis were routine outcomes from injuries that today would need a bandage and a tetanus shot. The only water is brown. The only cloth is filthy. That is the arithmetic, and the arithmetic was final. Number 5. One shared cup for the entire company. Here is where the killing starts to show its shape. Jesse Applegate described the routine in 1843. 1 water barrel, 1 tin dipper, 40 mouths at every noon halt. Healthy, sick, it made no difference. The same cup passed from lip to lip. Germ theory would not be accepted until the 1880s. They had no concept of the invisible thing passing from one mouth to the next. Once disease entered through one person, the shared cup guaranteed it reached everyone within days. This one looks small, a tin cup, but hold it in your mind. It connects to something bigger. Number 4. The dead animal corridor. You smelled it 2 miles before you saw it. By 1852, the Platte River Road was an open graveyard of livestock. Ezra Meeker wrote that dead oxen lay so thick you could step from one carcass to the next without touching ground. Trail historians estimate 30,000 to 50,000 dead animals along the corridor in peak years. Oxen that drank from alkali pools died within hours and were left where they dropped. Companies following behind walked through miles of active decomposition. The runoff drained directly into the same water sources the next company would drink from. Flies bred in the millions and moved from carcasses to food, cook pots, open sores, the faces of sleeping children. The contamination was flowing downhill, into the water. Remember that. Number 3. The dead rode with the living. When someone died of cholera at 2 in the morning, the body stayed in the wagon until dawn. The family lay beside it until first light. A cholera victim in the final hours purged fluids from both ends of the body, uncontrollably, massively. Those fluids soaked into the bedding. The family slept beside the body because there was nowhere else to go in the dark. At dawn, the body was wrapped in whatever could be spared and buried in a scrape barely 18 inches deep. Wagons were driven over fresh graves to hide them from wolves. Then the family climbed back into the same wagon, onto the same bedding, and continued west. Hold this one. Let it sit. This is not a fact. This is a night, a real night, in a real wagon with a real family. We are coming back to it. Number 2. The trail became a river of human waste. 50,000 people, one road, no sanitation infrastructure of any kind. Emigrants camped on the same ground the previous company had used days earlier. The same water source used for drinking was the same one the last group had used as a latrine downstream. Dysentery made control impossible. Excrement accumulated near wagons, near cook fires, near the riverbank where water was drawn each morning. In the cholera years, 1849 through 1852, each company contaminated the ground and water for the company behind it. By midsummer, the road from Missouri to Oregon was functionally an open sewer 2,000 miles long, and not one person on it understood why people were dying. The dominant medical theory blamed bad air. Miasma. They could smell the dead animals. They could not smell the cholera. Number 1. The water. The water killed more people on the Oregon Trail than everything else on this list combined, and it connects nearly every entry below it into one killing mechanism. Dr. Israel. Lord documented its speed in 1849. Healthy at breakfast, dead by sundown. Some faster. Amelia Stewart Knight noted fresh graves along the road every single day for weeks in June of 1853. Vibrio cholera entered the overland trail system through steamboat passengers arriving from New Orleans in 1849. It spread through fecal contamination of water. The Platte, the Sweetwater, the Humboldt. Each became a transmission corridor. Cholera killed in hours. Victims died of dehydration so severe the skin turned blue-gray, the eyes sank into the skull, the fingers wrinkled as though submerged for days. One company in 1852 buried 14 members in 2 weeks, all drawing from the same stretch of river. The shared cup at number 5, that was the water. The dead animals at number 4 draining into the water. The human waste at number 2 flowing into the water. The wounds washed at number 6, washed with the water. The fluids from the dead at number 3 carried by the water. Every hygiene failure on this list drained into the same place. And every morning a mother filled a cup from that place and handed it to her children. She dried herself with the same cloth she had used the day before and the day before that. But bathing was only one task in a body's day that demanded dozens more before dark. Her teeth, her nails, her scalp, the skin beneath the clothes she could not wash as often as she wore them. Every surface had to be managed or maintained or quietly surrendered, and the full daily weight of holding a body together on the frontier is where this story has been heading since the first word. Number 14. The Saturday night bath and the pecking order. 1 tub, 1 fire. 1 kettle of heated water carried across the cabin. Father went first, then mother, then the children, eldest to youngest, into the same water. By the time the smallest child went in, it was gray and barely warm. There was no draining and refilling. Water was hauled by hand, heated over a fire, and used until it was gone. Every family on the frontier knew this order, and nobody questioned it. The old warning, "Do not throw the baby out with the bathwater," was not a joke. It was advice from a time when the baby went last and the water was too dark to see through. This is where we begin. Everything from here goes deeper. Number 13. The soap that could take the skin off your hands. Lydia Maria Child published The American Frugal Housewife in 1829. In it, she laid out how to make soap from rendered animal fat and hardwood ash lye. You boiled it for hours in an iron kettle over an open fire. You tested its strength on the back of your hand. Too weak, and it would not cut the grease. Too strong, and it burned. There was no measured formula. A frontier woman gauged the chemistry by feel, batch after batch, year after year. Hollywood puts a clean white bar beside a china basin. The real bar smelled of tallow and wood smoke, and it could peel the skin off your knuckles. Number 12. hair washing happened once a month, if a woman was lucky. Godey's Ladies' Book, the most widely read women's magazine of the 19th century, recommended washing the hair no more than once a month. The methods were egg yolk beaten into the scalp, borax dissolved in rainwater, or Castile soap if you could afford it. Between washings, a woman dragged a boar bristle brush through her hair. The famous 100 strokes was not vanity. It was maintenance. On the trail and in the sod houses, even monthly was too often to manage. Lice were constant. The swept-up hair in every Western was, in real life, often matted and crawling. Number 11. The sponge bath was the only daily routine most women ever knew. A basin, a rag, and a pint of heated water. Face, neck, hands, underarms, and nothing more. Molly Dorsey Sanford kept a diary on the Nebraska frontier starting in 1857. In her pages, a full bath was an event worth writing down. Most mornings, the cat wash was everything she got. Full immersion meant heating a full tub of water. That meant burning fuel. Fuel meant labor. Labor meant daylight she could not spare. A single bath could cost a woman half her morning. Most mornings, she chose the rag. Number 10. Masking the smell was a science of its own. Vinegar dabbed behind the ears. Lavender sachets stitched inside a petticoat. Camphor tucked into an apron pocket. Rosewater if you could get it, and most could not. Women chewed cloves or fennel seed to manage their breath. The smell inside a frontier cabin was wood smoke, animal grease, sweat, and lye. Nobody was pretending to smell like a parlor. They were trying to make a one-room house bearable for a family of 6. The perfume bottle in the Hollywood saloon scene is a prop. The vinegar rag folded into the apron was the real thing. We are halfway through this list, and the truth, I believe, was hardest to live with has not appeared yet. That one is still coming. Number 9. River bathing could cost a woman her modesty or her life. Where running water was close, women used it, but social codes did not bend for comfort. Bathing without clothing in daylight was unthinkable in that world. Many waded in fully dressed or waited until after dark. A woman in soaked skirts and petticoats caught in a river current carried 30 extra pounds of wet cloth pulling her down. Drownings along the emigrant trails were documented in plain language. No one had to explain what she was doing in the water. The serene creek scene in every frontier film, the woman bathing in golden sunlight with her hair floating free, is one of the most dishonest pictures Hollywood ever painted. Number 8. The Overland Trail destroyed every routine a woman had. Amelia Stewart Knight crossed to Oregon in 1853. Her diary records weeks of alkaline dust that cracked her lips and burned her eyes. The water along long stretches of the trail was not dirty. It was caustic. Women who washed their faces in it came away with reddened, peeling skin. There was no fuel to heat bath water. No privacy behind a canvas wagon with 40 families camped within earshot. Catherine Hahn, bound for California in 1849, wrote of water rationed strictly for drinking. Nothing left over for washing. 5 months on that trail, and the last real bath a woman remembered might have been back in Missouri. Number 7. Winter on the plains could mean months without washing at all. Inside a sod house on the Nebraska frontier, the air could hover near freezing for weeks. Water froze in the basin before morning. Heating a full tub meant burning fuel. And every twisted stem of hay, every dried buffalo chip, every corn cob burned for bathwater was one not burned to cook a meal or keep a child alive through the night. Some families went from November through March without a single full bath. Not because they did not want one, because the arithmetic of survival would not allow it. A woman chose between her body and her children. She chose the children every time. Number 6. The bathhouse existed, but it was not built for her. In Dodge City and Virginia City and Abilene, a hot bath could be bought for 25 cents. The tub sat in a back room behind the barber shop or upstairs from the saloon. These were spaces built for trail hands and cattlemen and miners. An unaccompanied woman walking into one of those rooms would have drawn stares at best. For the farm wife on a quarter section 20 miles from town, the bathhouse did not exist. The clawfoot tub in the Western Hotel is real enough. It belonged to the wealthy, the townsman, the man who could pay. It never belonged to her. Number 5. Menstruation with no water and no privacy. The historical record here is almost silent, and the silence is the evidence. Women used hand-sewn rags. They washed them by hand and reused them until the fabric fell apart. Washing those rags required hot water and time, and both were scarce. In a one-room cabin shared with a husband and children, there was no separate space, no running water, no way to manage privately what the body demanded every single month. No diary dwells on it. No letter home describes it. Hollywood never once acknowledged it happened at all. That silence across 150 years of film is louder than anything else on this list so far. Number 4. After childbirth, she was told not to bathe at all. The lying in. After delivery, a frontier woman was confined to bed, and full washing was forbidden, sometimes for 2 weeks, sometimes longer. Gunn's Domestic Medicine, first printed in 1830 and carried west in thousands of wagons, warned that bathing too soon after birth could bring childbed fever. In an era when puerperal fever killed roughly 1 in every 20 to 40 women who gave birth, the fear behind that rule was not irrational, but the cost was real. Weeks unwashed in the same bedding in a cabin with no ventilation. That was the welcome a new mother received on the American frontier. Number 3. Her teeth told the truth the costume department covered up. A toothbrush was a luxury most frontier women never held in their hands. Salt rubbed on the gums with a finger, baking soda if it was available, soot from the fireplace used as a crude abrasive. Many used nothing but a frayed willow twig. By her mid-30s, a frontier woman was likely missing several teeth. Gum disease was a constant companion. The woman smiling with a full set of bright white teeth in every Western was a fantasy built in a makeup chair. The real mouth told a harder story, and the camera never once got close enough to show it. We are down to the last 2, and the truth I believe was hardest to live with is not about the body at all. It is about the mind. Number 2. The doctors of her own time told her that bathing itself was dangerous. This is the entry this whole list has been building toward. The dominant medical theory of the 18th and 19th centuries held that disease entered through open pores. Warm water opened the pores, therefore bathing invited sickness in. Dr. William Buchan published Domestic Medicine in 1769. It was reprinted for nearly a century. It was one of the most widely owned medical books in frontier households. And it warned against frequent bathing. This woman was not ignorant. She was not backward. She was following the best advice her world could give her. And the advice was wrong. Every other truth on this list is a truth of circumstance. No water, no fuel, no privacy, no time. This one is a truth of authority. The men who claimed to know the science told her the thing she needed most was the thing most likely to harm her. Hold that. Number 1. Hollywood replaced all of it with a woman in a clean calico dress. This is not a single scene. It is a century of pictures. From the earliest silent westerns through John Ford, through Little House on the Prairie, through every frontier drama since, the pioneer woman is spotless. Her dress is pressed. Her hair is brushed. Her teeth are straight and white. That image was not an accident. It was a decision made in a costume department. The studios knew. They chose the version that sold tickets. And in doing so, they did not just hide the dirt. They hid the woman, the intelligence, the endurance, the daily ingenuity of someone who kept a family alive in conditions that would put most of us on the ground inside a week. The average American today uses close to 80 gallons of water a day without thinking twice. These women fought for a pint. And the hardest truth on this list is not the lie, the cold, or the shared water. It is number 2. It is being told by the highest authority in your world that the one thing your body ached for would be the thing to kill you. Every other hardship, a strong woman could survive with grit. All 5 of these truths lived in one body on one day, not spread across a month or divided among 5 different women on 5 different homesteads. One woman. She wiped the sweat from her neck with a rag that smelled of yesterday. She folded the cloth she had bled through and buried it behind the wagon. She hauled the same water she would boil for washing before the light was gone and stood in the doorway of the sari to let the evening air touch her arms for the first time since sunrise. The distance between what she lived and what we were told is not a distance she created. When was the last time anyone asked what it actually cost her body to look the way the photographs said she looked? The sari still stands in a few places across the plains. Roof collapsed, dirt walls melting slowly back into the grass. The basin is gone, the kettle is gone, the stove is a shape of rust in a room that no longer has a floor. No camera ever stood in that doorway while she did what she did every morning of her life. No crew dressed a set to look like what she actually touched. She was real. No one filmed it.